The Man in House 9. A quiet street. Maplewood was the kind of Ohio neighborhood where everyone knew everyone, where dogs barked at mailmen and porch lights blinked on in unison each night. Sarah Collins had moved there after her divorce, hoping for peace for herself and her 10-year-old son, Noah. The neighbors were kind, the lawns were perfect, and every morning smelled faintly of coffee and cut grass. Except for House 9, it sat at the curve of the street, windows sealed with heavy curtains. The grass was overgrown, and no one had seen the owner in years. Kids on bikes avoided it, calling it the listening house. Sarah laughed at the rumor, until one night, she noticed the porch light flicker on for the first time. She peeked through her blinds and saw a tall, shadowy figure standing perfectly still behind the front window of House 9, facing her house. When she blinked, the light went out and the shadow was gone. The watching window. Over the next week, Sarah kept seeing that same window glow faintly between midnight and 3 a.m. It became an obsession. She'd stand by her own living room window, trying to make sense of it. Sometimes she swore she could see movement behind the curtain, like someone pacing. One night, curiosity got the better of her. She aimed her phone camera across the street, zooming in. The lens adjusted, and for a split second, she caught a reflection in the window. It was her own face, but she wasn't smiling. Startled, she checked the photo again, and the image was gone, replaced by pure static. She deleted it instantly, heart pounding. The next morning, a note appeared in her mailbox, handwritten on lined paper. "Don't take pictures of my house again, no signature. No address, just a faint brown stain along the edge, like dried blood. No one lives there." Sarah couldn't shake the unease. During her shift at the hospital, she asked an elderly patient who'd lived in Maplewood for decades about House 9. The woman's face went pale. "Oh, honey, that house burned down years ago. Nobody lives there now." Sarah laughed nervously, insisting she saw lights, even someone inside. "Then you saw what everyone else saw," the woman whispered. "The last owner, he didn't know he was dead either." That night, Sarah called the town records office. They confirmed the property had been foreclosed in 2006 after a domestic tragedy. No further details were available. When she got home, Noah was awake, sitting in the dark. "Mom," he said softly, "the man from across the street waved at me." Sarah froze. "What man?" "The one who looks like you but with no eyes." The night visitor. Determined to end the paranoia, Sarah decided to confront it. She waited until midnight, flashlight in hand, and crossed the street. The air was damp and heavy, her breath fogging as she approached the crumbling porch. The boards creaked like whispers. The front door, to her shock, was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of rot and damp plaster. Faint breathing echoed, or maybe it was just the wind. Her flashlight beam caught framed photos on the wall, each one faded and blackened by smoke. Families, smiling faces. One photo in the middle made her freeze. It was her and Noah, but the date on the frame said 1999, 16 years before she moved there. Footsteps sounded above her. Slow, dragging, deliberate, she whispered. "Who's there?" A deep voice answered from the top of the stairs. "You shouldn't live in my house." The realization. Sarah bolted for the door, but the knob wouldn't turn. Behind her, the voice grew louder, closer, whispering through every wall. Her flashlight flickered as the stairway creaked. She pointed the light upward and froze. At the top of the stairs stood a man in a torn plaid shirt, his face blistered and blackened like burned wood. His eyes were just hollow sockets leaking smoke. "We never moved out," he rasped. The air thickened with the smell of burning plastic. Suddenly, Sarah was surrounded by faint outlines of people, silhouettes in the smoke. They were whispering her name. She screamed for Noah and crashed through the back door, stumbling into the yard. But when she turned back, the house was dark and intact, no fire, no movement. Yet her hands were covered in black soot that wasn't there before. The house next door. The next morning, Sarah called the police. They found no trace of entry, no footprints, no photos on the walls, and nothing. The house, they said, was completely empty. But later that week, as she drove home, she saw something that made her stomach twist. A "for sale" sign in her own front yard. The listing number read Noc 9. Panicked, she ran inside to find Noah gone. Only the faint smell of smoke lingered in his room. The phone rang. She answered, shaking. A man's voice, calm, distant as smoke. You shouldn't take what isn't yours. Then from her window, she saw it. Her own house across the street, dark, curtains drawn, and a figure standing in the window. It wasn't House 9 anymore, it was hers. The neighbor in the attic, a fresh start. When Evan Miller moved to Portland, he wanted peace, a break from the chaos of Los Angeles. His new rental on Ashcroft Drive looked perfect. 2 bedrooms, wide backyard, small porch, and a massive attic that the landlord said was just for storage. The neighbors were friendly, all except the house across the street, where blinds stayed shut 24/7. Every time Evan walked his dog, he felt someone watching from behind those curtains. He brushed it off as city paranoia. Portland's rain had a way of making everything look a little sad, a little haunted. But late that first night, as he unpacked boxes, he heard a slow dragging noise above the ceiling, a muffled scrape across the attic floorboards. He froze, staring up. Then something small, like sawdust, drifted from the ceiling vent. He grabbed a broom handle and tapped the ceiling once. Silence. Then came 3 taps back. The noise that wouldn't stop. Evan told himself it was squirrels. Or rats, anything logical. But over the next few nights, the noises grew rhythmic. Not random scurrying, but measured footsteps, moving from one end of the attic to the other. He told his landlord, but she swore the attic was sealed. No one's been up there in years, she said. Curiosity burned through his fear. Evan slid open the pull-down ladder one afternoon. Dust cascaded down like ash. He climbed halfway, flashlight in hand, the beam slicing through webs and darkness. That's when he saw it, a sleeping bag, flattened but warm in the far corner. Next to it, a stack of Polaroid photos. He crawled closer and froze. Each photo was of him, eating breakfast, brushing his teeth, sitting on the porch with his dog. All taken from inside the house. The last photo showed him asleep, from above. The call to police. Evan's hands shook as he called 911. Officers arrived within minutes, sweeping the attic with flashlights. They found the sleeping bag, a half-empty water bottle and food wrappers. But the intruder was gone. They dusted for prints, nothing. One of the officers muttered, "Probably a homeless squatter got scared off, but that didn't make sense." Evan had lived there only 2 weeks. Someone had been watching him long before he moved in. That night he locked every door and window, sleeping with a kitchen knife under his pillow. Around 2:13 a.m. the heater kicked on, but instead of warm air the vents hissed with whispering. He leaned close. Through the vent he swore he heard a low voice say, "You shouldn't have gone up there." Evan slammed the vent shut and left every light in the house on until sunrise. Oh, the neighbor's warning. The next morning, Evan's neighbor, an older man named Frank, waved him over. He looked uneasy. "You're living in the Carson place, huh?" Evan nodded. Frank sighed. "You know why it stayed empty for so long?" Turns out the last tenant, a woman named Rachel, had vanished 3 years earlier. Police assumed she ran off, but Frank remembered seeing someone in her attic window days after she disappeared. When Evan told him about the photos, Frank's face went pale. "Call your landlord," he said. "Ask her who has the attic key." That evening, Evan did. The landlord's response chilled him. "There isn't a key." The previous owner nailed it shut after everything that happened. Evan asked what she meant, but she hung up. From inside the attic, he heard a soft laugh. The return. Rain lashed against the windows that night and power flickered in the house. Evan sat with his dog curled beside him, flashlight on the table. Every creak made him flinch. At exactly 12:47 a.m., his phone buzzed. A notification from his indoor security camera. Motion detected. Kitchen. He opened the feed. The camera showed a figure, tall, pale, wearing a dark raincoat, standing at the refrigerator. But what made his blood freeze was the camera angle. It wasn't positioned where he left it. It was filming from inside the pantry, through a small slit between boxes. He bolted from his bed, knife in hand, and crept toward the kitchen. The floorboards were wet. Footprints led to the attic ladder. He turned on the light and saw the ladder already pulled down. The confrontation, heart pounding, Evan climbed halfway up. The smell hit him first, stale sweat and something rotten. He raised his flashlight, sweeping the beam across the dark, and there he was. A man crouched in the far corner, skin pale, eyes wild, breathing ragged. He wore Evan's stolen hoodie. In his hand was a Polaroid camera. "You moved into my house," he whispered. I never left. Evan lunged down the ladder, slamming it shut. He grabbed his phone. No signal. The dog barked violently, scratching the back door. Suddenly, the attic door creaked open again, slow and deliberate. Footsteps descended one step at a time. The power went out. The house across Willow Street, a perfect neighborhood. When Lindsay moved into her new house on Willow Street, it felt like the American dream. A small garden, white picket fence, friendly neighbors, especially Mr. Grayson, an older man across the street who waved every morning while watering his roses. Her 9-year-old son, Noah, loved biking around the cul-de-sac. Everything felt safe, until one afternoon when she noticed something odd. Every time she stepped outside, she heard a camera shutter click. She glanced toward Mr. Grayson's window. The blinds swayed. A faint reflection of a long camera lens pointed directly at her yard. That night, she told herself she was overreacting. But just before bed, Noah asked, "Mom, why was Mr. Grayson standing in my room?" She froze. Their windows faced different sides of the street. The man in the window. The next day, Lindsay kept watch from her kitchen window. Rain slicked the sidewalks and Mr. Grayson's curtains were drawn. But every few minutes, they twitched open, just enough for her to glimpse a pale face and the glint of glasses. That night, while tucking Noah in, she heard footsteps outside the bedroom window, soft, careful. She turned off the lamp and peeked through the blinds. A figure stood on the curb, umbrella tilted down, face obscured. He wasn't moving. Just staring up at the house, she called out, "Mr. Grayson!" The figure didn't respond. Only when a car passed did she see the reflection. Empty eye sockets in the streetlight glare. The figure disappeared behind the bushes. When police came, they found nothing, but the next morning, a single Polaroid photo lay on her porch. It was of her and Noah, taken through the window. The hidden camera Lindsay installed new locks and a small motion-detecting doorbell camera. Days passed quietly. But one evening, while reviewing footage, she noticed something strange. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the feed glitched, static and flicker. Then, for a split second, a pair of eyes appeared inches from the camera, before the feed went black. The following morning, she found the camera's lens scratched, like someone had carved an X into it. She reported it to the police again. They promised to look into it. That night, Noah pointed toward the window. "Mom, he's in the house." Lindsay turned and saw a faint shadow move down the hallway. She grabbed a flashlight, heart racing. Hand followed it. The trail led to the basement door, slightly ajar. On the wall was a new Polaroid. It showed her sleeping in her bed. The secret basement room police arrived within minutes. They swept through the basement until one officer shouted, "Over here!" Behind an old wooden shelving unit, they found a narrow passage. It led to a hidden crawl space sealed by a false wall. Inside were food wrappers, empty water bottles, and hundreds of photos, all of Lindsay and Noah. Taken over months, Mr. Grayson was missing. Officers checked his property and found a hidden door in his attic, connecting through a crawl tunnel between both houses. In his room, they discovered maps of the neighborhood with red circles, every family's home marked. Lindsay's house was the only one crossed out. When they searched the tunnel, they found footprints, fresh ones, leading away from her basement toward the storm drain. The return. Weeks later, Lindsay and Noah moved in with her sister. The police never caught Grayson. The news called him the Willow Street Watcher, but one rainy night while scrolling through her phone, Lindsay saw an unfamiliar contact appear on her photo app, shared album Willow Memories. She opened it. Inside were new photos, grainy, recent. One showed her car parked at her sister's driveway. Another of Noah walking home from school. The final picture was the most chilling, a close-up of her face taken from behind the living room curtain. She screamed and dropped the phone. It vibrated in her hand. A text notification appeared. "You moved again. The house that watches." The FBI eventually took over the case, believing Grayson may have lived under false identities across the Midwest, but neighbors on Willow Street still reported strange activity. At night, porch lights flickered one by one. People claimed to hear camera shutters clicking from their backyards. A year later, the house Lindsay fled was put up for rent again. Her new family moved in, a couple with 2 kids. 3 weeks later, the wife called the police about noises in the walls. They dismissed it as mice, but on the next stormy night, when the new tenants checked their security feed, they saw something horrifying. A man's face staring from inside the attic vent, smiling. The camera feed ended with a faint whisper, "Welcome back to Willow Street." The lights on Meadowbrook Lane. The new neighbor. Rachel lived alone on Meadowbrook Lane, a sleepy Oregon suburb lined with cedar fences and flickering streetlights. Everything changed when a new family moved into the house across the street, the Harrows. They seemed friendly at first, but something about them felt off. Their curtains were always closed. The porch light never went off, and even at 3 a.m. one evening, Rachel stepped outside to photograph the fog rolling in and noticed a figure standing in their upstairs window, still, unmoving, just watching her. She waved awkwardly, but the figure didn't react. A moment later, the window went black. That night, Rachel swore she heard soft humming coming from outside her bedroom window, the same tune she'd heard the Harrow kids singing earlier that day. When she looked outside, no one was there, only her camera lying on the porch turned on. The humming in the night. The next few nights grew stranger. Rachel began hearing faint footsteps along her gravel driveway around midnight. Every time she checked, she'd find small muddy footprints near her door. Too small for an adult, but too large for a child. She asked her neighbor, Mrs. Danner, if she'd seen anything. Mrs. Danner frowned. "The Harrows moved out last month, dear. That house is empty." Rachel didn't believe it. She'd seen lights in their window just last night. That evening, she set up her camera tripod facing their house. The fog was heavy, glowing under the streetlights. Through her lens, she saw a faint light flicker in the Harrows' living room. Then, a shadow crossed the window. A tall man with elongated arms, swaying slightly as he hummed. Her camera clicked 3 times. When she checked the photos, only 2 had saved. The third was blank, just a white blur. The empty house. The next morning, Rachel called the police. Officer Kellen arrived and agreed to check the Harrows' property. The house looked abandoned. Dust, boarded windows, uncut grass. But as they walked inside, the officer noticed fresh, muddy shoe prints leading upstairs. "Someone's been here recently," he said. Flashlight sweeping across the hallway. Rachel followed hesitantly. The smell of mildew was thick, mixed with something metallic. They reached a bedroom, the wallpaper peeled, a child's toy box overturned. Inside it lay photographs, dozens of them. Each one showed Rachel, sleeping, cooking, sitting at her desk. Officer Kellen's radio crackled suddenly, white noise, then a faint humming through the speaker. When they turned toward the hall, the sound was coming from the dark, the same tune Rachel heard before. The officer raised his light. At the end of the hallway stood a man's figure, smiling. The recording. The man vanished into the darkness before they could react. The police searched the property but found no one. That night, Rachel tried to review her camera footage again. In one clip, taken during the fog, she noticed something behind her reflection. A second face, pressed against the glass, then faintly, in the background, humming. The next morning, she received an envelope on her doorstep. Inside were printed photos and new ones. One showed her and Officer Kellen standing inside the Harrows' house from the day before. The second was worse. It was a still image from inside her own bedroom, taken from the corner near the closet, written in red marker at the bottom. "You shouldn't have looked inside." She called Kellen immediately, but his number was disconnected. The vanished officer. Rachel drove to the police station in panic. No one there had ever heard of an Officer Kellen. No badge number matched. No record. Terrified, she returned home to pack her things, only to find her front door wide open. The lights were off. Her camera lay on the floor, lens shattered. As she reached for it, she noticed something strange. On the wall above her couch hung a framed photo she didn't own. Her own face, sleeping peacefully. She ripped it down. Behind it, a hole had been carved into the drywall. Inside was a tiny lens and a small humming device still running. Rachel fell back, trembling. The humming got louder, filling the house. Then she realized it wasn't coming from the device, it was coming from upstairs. The house across the street. Rachel fled into the rain, barefoot, clutching her phone. Across the street, the empty Harrow house was lit again, all the windows glowing. Through the upstairs window, she saw the figure again, tall, still, watching. Behind him stood Officer Kellen, smiling faintly. Eyes blank, Rachel screamed for help as the lights in both houses flickered violently. Her phone buzzed, a new message. It was a live video feed. The camera showed her house's living room, recording in real time. From inside the shot, someone slowly stepped into frame. A man in a dark raincoat, humming the same tune. The final shot on her phone froze. Her own reflection appeared on screen, and behind her a man's hand reached for her shoulder. The woman in the basement window, the house with the covered windows. Daniel had lived on Hollow Pine Court for 2 years before he noticed the house at the end of the block. The windows were all covered from the inside, taped with thick black trash bags. No mail ever got picked up. No cars came or left. One morning while jogging, Daniel saw a woman's face in the basement window. She wasn't moving, just staring blankly toward him. Pale, motionless, eyes wide, he slowed, blinked, and she was gone. Later that night, Daniel mentioned it to his neighbor, Tom. Tom frowned. That house has been empty since the Mitchell family disappeared. Police never found them. Rain began to pour, and as Daniel looked back toward the end of the street, he saw it again, a faint orange light flickering behind the same basement window. It looked almost like a candle flame. The knock at 2:17 a.m. That night, Daniel was woken by 3 slow knocks at his front door. Steady, deliberate. He froze. His porch light flicked on automatically, revealing the faint outline of a woman standing at the edge of the driveway. She wasn't moving, just standing there, head slightly tilted. Her hair was wet, sticking to her face, her dress torn. Daniel called out, "Hey, are you okay?" The woman didn't answer. She just turned and walked back toward the end of the street, toward the abandoned Mitchell house. Daniel stayed up until sunrise, trying to convince himself it was a sleep-deprived hallucination. But when he checked his porch security footage later that day, the camera showed no one standing there, just 3 wet footprints on his front steps, leading away from his door. The candlelight the following evening, Daniel couldn't stop glancing out his window. Every few minutes, he'd see the faint orange flicker again inside the Mitchell basement, moving slowly from window to window. Finally, he grabbed a flashlight and walked down the street. As he got closer, the smell of mildew and something metallic filled the air. He shined the light into the basement glass. Dust, cobwebs, and boxes. But then, as he stepped back, a hand slammed against the glass from inside, leaving a bloody smear. Daniel stumbled, dropping his flashlight. The basement light went out instantly. When police arrived, they searched the property but found nothing. No handprints, no blood, just one thing in the dirt outside the window. A small silver bracelet engraved with the initials LM. Later, Daniel would realize those were Laura Mitchell's initials, the missing homeowner. The recording Daniel couldn't sleep. He played back his porch camera again and again, zooming in on the night before. At 2:17 a.m., the footage flickered, and for a single frame, he saw a pale face pressed against his front door window, eyes wide open, shaking. He called the police again. They promised to send someone the next morning. At dawn, Daniel woke to find his basement door unlocked from the inside. He knew he had locked it the night before. Downstairs, his tools were scattered. The smell of wet earth and metal filled the room. On the cement floor, drawn in what looked like rust or blood, were 3 words, "Help me below." Daniel froze, staring at the faint outline of a muddy footprint leading toward the floor drain, the tunnel. Daniel called his friend Tom to come over. Together, they pried open the floor drain cover. Beneath it was a narrow tunnel, carved crudely into the dirt, barely wide enough for a person. The smell was overwhelming. They followed it with flashlights, crawling for several feet until Tom gagged. Ahead, in the beam of Daniel's light, were rusted cages, 5 or 6, half collapsed. Inside one lay a decaying skeleton, a silver bracelet still on its wrist. Tom screamed, backing out of the tunnel, But Daniel's flashlight flickered for just a second. Behind the cages, he saw movement, a pale shape shifting in the dark, eyes glinting. Then the light went out. When he crawled backward into daylight again, Tom was gone. Only his phone was left, its screen cracked, still recording. The woman returns. Police sealed the house again. They told Daniel there was no evidence of any tunnels or any remains. Everything he filmed was corrupted, footage unreadable. For weeks he barely slept. Then one night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., he woke to the sound of knocking, slow, deliberate. He looked out the window and saw her again, the woman from the basement standing in his driveway, soaked, staring up at his window. But this time, when she tilted her head, Daniel saw a flashlight clutched in her hand, his flashlight, the one he'd dropped near the tunnel. He backed away from the window, heart pounding, phone trembling in his hand. Outside, she began humming softly, a slow, broken tune. Then the light went out on Hollow Pine Court. Every house, every streetlight, except one, the basement window at the end of the block.